Thanks, Dad. No pressure. No pressure, right? Turn over your Bibles over to the book of James. No, I'm just kidding. I did want to mention real quick before we go on, there's going to be a short time of question and answers directly after Dr. Setzer gets done speaking. It's a good time to really glean if you have any questions concerning your bus ministry or anything that you would like to know. There's a lot of experience that these men can give you, and I would challenge you, take some time, maybe think of a couple questions that might relate to your ministry that you might have that you can get answered. I think it will help you, no doubt. Just because I'm curious, how many of you currently work on a bus route or in a bus ministry in some way? Whether you're a bus captain, bus driver, some way, shape, or form. Okay, how many are looking to get involved in the bus ministry? Aren't yet, but you're looking to get involved. Okay, very good. So the reason I ask that is I think it's always a good idea to know exactly where people are at. And it doesn't matter if you're on the bus ministry right now or if you're looking to get into the bus ministry. What I'm about to go over, it can be applied to your life. And honestly, the things I'm about to go over can really be applied to all of our lives in just our everyday living. If you got your Bibles, turn over to 1 Samuel chapter 30. 1 Samuel chapter 30. The theme of the bus conference this year is strengthening our hands. And if you know anything about working out or strengthening something, running, you have to do it over and over and over again in order to see results. So if you're wondering why it seems like all of these sessions covering the same material, it's because you're trying to beat it into your head. You know, it's like a workout. You got to go over it and over it and over it. What I want to talk about is really overcoming adversity. And it can be adversity from 2020 and the year that we just had. It can be adversity that we're going to face in 2021, or it can be just adversity in our lives that we have to overcome. 1 Samuel chapter 30, and if you'll start, I'm going to start reading at verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag and smitten Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken the women captives and were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives." Verse 4, "Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep." I think this is a pretty familiar passage of Scripture with most of us in here. I think actually, Brother Tyson, you mentioned it on Sunday. It's about David after he has spent really years running from Saul. David hadn't done anything wrong. David was trying to serve the Lord. David was anointed the next king. Can you imagine how David felt? Scholars believe that it was between 7 and 10 years that he spent on the run. He had no home. He was constantly trying to evade from being killed for something that he didn't do. And we come near the end of 1 Samuel where all of this is about to come to a close. David doesn't know that, though. He comes back with his men after a battle, and he gets back to Ziklag where his men's families are, their possessions, and he finds that it's all burned. Everyone's gone, taken captive. And it says that him and his men wept until they had no more tears, no more power to weep. You ever feel like that in your life? Sometimes you're just like, I'm just going to end it all, you know. Sometimes you're like, what's the point? You know, 2020, I know we've been talking a little bit about the past and all the difficulties that we've had. And I think we're all pretty much from small ministries. We all are in smaller areas. We have to work hard. And COVID has hit us all in different ways. But I think we could all, if I asked you to take a piece of paper out and write down, you know, maybe one of the most difficult things that you had to overcome in the year 2020, I bet all of us could think of something really easy. I was thinking about our bus ministry and our church and what we've been through 2020 and all the COVID stuff. When COVID hit, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, all the bus routes attendance went straight down. And for a time there, we actually combined all of our bus routes onto one bus. I mean, it was tough, and there was a lot of parents that didn't want to send their kids, and actually still to this day, there are some parents that haven't sent them back. We kept the buses running, we kept doing everything, tried to be safe, kept doing everything that we knew to do, and I don't know if this was in April, I think this was in April sometime, we were we were dropping off the kids, pulling the bus back after the church service, after we got done dropping off, and there was a police officer sitting outside the church. And we got off, and a police officer came up to us, and somebody living around here, driving by, saw that we were still meeting. And that was a time when technically, according to the governor, we weren't supposed to be meeting, and we just kept meeting anyway. At a time, we even tried to be wise and not have all of our cars parked here so that it looked like we were trying to be careful, under the radar. Didn't work, but someone called the police on us. We went out soul winning for a time there, and we had a lot of, you could say, unfriendly encounters. People that I can remember one story where my brother was handing out gospel tracts, and some guy took it upon his shoulders to run all the way across the neighborhood, all the way up to him and say, "You do realize this is a pandemic and COVID-19. And I was like, "So why did you come all the way over here to talk to me then?" But we had, we given out flyers for buses and going soul winning. We had a lot of times where people didn't like that. And I'm sure you all know what that's like. I'm sure you've had experiences like that. We had, at one point, I don't remember what month it was, but we went to renew the registrations on our buses. And DMV and all our county stuff all consolidated. They all went together. And for some reason, when they were all together, they got to actually looking at the laws that Nebraska has. And they said that we couldn't renew our registrations because our buses weren't painted. And if we have a school bus and it's not a public school bus, it has to be painted. Now, we've known that that's been things like in the People's Republic of Maryland, where it's a communist, we knew that places like that, they require that. But here in Nebraska, it's, free reign. We get to do whatever we want. But we tried to renew the registration, and they said, nope, you have to get it painted. And that was in the middle of all of this stuff, so it just kept piling and piling and piling on. And then there was a time in the middle of all this where we actually had, in our community, is a close-knit community, about 25,000 people, and everyone's on Facebook. Everyone sees everything. It gets to a point where sometimes everyone can recognize you if something spreads through the community. Well, there was a time where there was some false information. A video got out where the context wasn't put in proper perspective, and it just went everywhere, tearing down our church and our ministry and what we were about. And it got to a point where me and my brother were walking into Subway, and it felt like everyone was looking at us. And we were just like, man, this is weird. And we went through the line, got done, and the lady that was at the register, she was checking us out, and she said, "Hey, I've got a question." And we're like, "Okay." And I swear, everyone in the entire shop went. And she asked about that information that was on Facebook in that video, and she said, it was really strange because she knew our names, she knew what we did in the church. She said she stalked our website and everything. She knew everything. So you never know, you're just walking around trying to be a good Christian, and you have to in small areas because everybody knows you. So it's, but she asked us about it. She said it just didn't seem right what everyone was saying. Why would you guys run buses and do all of that just to, to have that type of a reputation? So we were able to explain it. She still works there. Every time we go in there, she calls us by name. We have a great relationship. She comes over and talks to us. But there's a time there where I felt like every other Saturday I was having to visit another bus family and talk to some parents about what was on that video and what they were wondering about, and having to explain to them. And some parents pulled their kids out. And it was just one of those things where David constantly running away from Saul, and then he gets back to Ziklag, and this thing happens, and he's just like, "Really, God? Just the one more thing on my plate." And it says they wept until they didn't have any more power to weep. And I think that happens in our lives at times. I think we can get so overcome by adversity, especially through 2020. All of the different things that are on our plate as ministries, as churches, as individuals, we have all of these things that we have to bear. And sometimes it seems like God is sending adversity our way, and we don't know why. Sometimes you just want to give up. But when we get to an area like that, how do we overcome adversity? How do we dig our feet in, stand tall, and continue on? How do we achieve that? One thing I was thinking about with the bus ministry, and it's fun to have the bus conference. It's fun to have all of the kids and have that video and have the fantastic preaching and being encouraged and just you're fired up. But the truth is, the bus ministry isn't always fun. There's a lot of times, if you've been in the bus ministry for any amount of time, you know that a lot of times you wake up on Sunday morning and you're like, I have no idea why I'm doing this. Sometimes the bus ministry, it seems like it's never the kids that you like get on the bus. It's always that one. It's always that one. Zaven, God bless him. We love it. Every bus route has that one kid, and you just reminds you what the ministry's all about. Sometimes, a couple weeks ago, the temperature just dove down, and it was in the negatives. I think 2 Sundays in a row here, we were starting the buses on Sunday morning in negative degree temperature. I think not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, it was like -4 or 5 degrees when we were starting to roll out. And for two Sundays in a row, one of our buses went down. One of them, the brakes froze up and a part went out, and that was Brother Peter had to fix that on Monday. And it's just like, you try to have everything ready to go, and you're freezing, you're tired, you pretty much hate bus kids at this point. You don't know why and then it's cold, and then your bus doesn't work. And then the following Sunday, my bus went down. It was fine, and we started driving, and we lost all power, and we could only go 3 miles an hour, and that wouldn't work at all. And so we had to park it, take the small bus, and sometimes it's just like all of these things. And the truth is, you're going to get pumped up, and I hope you do for the bus route, and you're going to want to go back home. But the truth of the matter is, when you get back home, you're going to be faced with adversity. You're going to be faced with cold mornings. In the summer, you're going to be faced with hot mornings. You're going to be faced with times where you're getting out of bed sore, getting out of bed tired. There's going to be times where you're going to look at bus kids and you're not going to know why you're investing your life into them. So how do we continue on? What do we do? I want you to turn over to 2 Timothy real quick. 2 Timothy. I want us to take a little bit of advice from this guy named Paul. In the book of 2 Timothy, Paul is writing this to Timothy, and he's really trying to be an encouragement to Timothy. And he's telling him, in essence, the entire book, he's saying, hey, stay strong. Keep going. But what's even more amazing is not just what he's saying, but where he's saying it from. Paul is writing this letter in prison. And he knows that he is nearing the end of his ministry. He's waiting his execution, and he knows that. If you read near the end of the book, you know that he's saying, my life is pretty much spent. It's pretty much over. And he knows that. And so he's telling Timothy some things that he wants him to know when Paul's gone, he's off the scene, some things that this is what you need to know to overcome adversity. I want you to look down at verse 6. It says, wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God, which is in thee by the putting on of my hands. I want to give you 3 words, 3 points, 3 words that will help you to stay encouraged, help you to overcome whatever adversity it is in your life, whether it's personal, whether it's in the ministry, whatever it is, 3 words that we all need to do. Number 1, the first word is stir. The first word is stir. The Greek word here that's translated as stir up actually denotes a kindling of a fire by bellowing or blowing or movement. This is not just talking about stirring your coffee in the morning, although that could be applicable. It's talking about, we all have experienced going to camp at some point, and we always have that bonfire, and it's awesome. We throw all that wood on there. It gets real big, and it's bright, and it's hot, and everybody got to move their chairs back. And then you start singing or goofing around, and 30 minutes goes by, and that fire just sort of dies down. And it begins to get dark, and it begins to get cold. And what do you have to do? You got to throw more wood on it. You got to stir it up a little. You got to kindle it. You got to get it reignited, relit. Sometimes in our life, that's what we have to do. We have to rekindle ourselves and the gift of God that God gave us. Now, there are really 3 things here that we need. Some of us in this room, we need to realize that we have a gift from God, that we have a fire. Whether you're new to church, you're a new convert, or whether you're young and you're just getting started, wanting to serve in the ministry, wanting to be involved in the bus ministry, you need to understand God gave you a gift. Some of those are very, very special gifts, but the number 1 gift that you have if you've asked Jesus Christ to save you is salvation. And what Paul was saying to Timothy is that he was saying, Timothy, you're saved, you have a gift that God gave you. You need to stir that up and give that gift to others. One of the reasons that we don't have bus ministries that continue on, or in small churches, they seem to really struggle and seem to die, is because we have a younger generation and we have people that don't realize that they have a gift. They have a fire that needs to be stirred up. They have a job or responsibility to help the next generation. There are kids in your community that need the gospel. All of us in here, I hope everyone in here is saved. And if you're saved, you have a job as a Christian, a responsibility to give that gift to somebody else. But it's going to take you stopping and saying, I've got a responsibility here, and my responsibility is to get this gospel to somebody else. And why are we here? It's all about the bus ministry. And I'll tell you right now, the bus ministry isn't just about a bus. The bus ministry is about people. It's about looking to help people, looking to help children and adults and families, regardless of their age, give them the gospel. But some of us in here, we need to realize that we have a fire. And we need to stir that up and say, I'm going to get involved in these ministries. We have a pastor or a bus director that needs help. He needs a bus driver. He needs a bus worker. He needs somebody to take on that role and stand up and say, I am willing to stir that gift that's inside of me and help other people. But you got to step up to the plate. You got to realize people are dying and going to hell, and they need someone to care for them. And it could just be one person in this room that needs to step up to the plate. And your pastor needs you. Pastor can't do everything. You know, in small ministries, sometimes pastors got to drive the buses. You know, what you're talking about last night, I've seen it, my dad do it for years, where he's been involved in every last ministry, and then he gets off the buses, or he gets off of doing what is teaching Sunday school, and you got to go straight into singing the specials, straight into preaching. You've got all of these responsibilities, but those who are younger in here, that are growing up in church, you should say, you know what, I've got a fire inside of me. I've got a responsibility, a job to work on the bus ministry someday. And when I get older, that's what I'm going to do. And those of you that are new converts, that are just getting started in church, don't just come to church. Get involved in church. Look around and you say, how can I be a blessing? How can I help? For the rest of us, some of us, we need to remember what we have. Let's look at verse 7. It says, for God hath not given us the spirit of what? Fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Some of us Christians, some of us bus workers have been in the ministry for a long time, and we can forget. And Paul was reminding Timothy, hey, God didn't give you a spirit of fear. We just came through COVID-19, and we're still going through it. And everyone is running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and they're scared. They're masking, double masking, triple masking, you know. They're doing all of these things because they're running in fear. And God said as Christians, we ought to be that person, that light that stands up. And I'm not saying be stupid, but I'm saying we should be the person that's saying, I'm not scared because God didn't give me the spirit of fear. What did he give us? He gave us the spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. That means we can think for ourselves and we can know what is important, what's not important. But what tends to happen is we get overwhelmed by our adversity. We get overwhelmed by the things in our life that we have to deal with, and we forget, hey, God gave you the power to overcome it, but you have to be willing to step out and do it. The other thing we have to do when we're stirring up the gift that God gave us is we have to recall why we are doing what we're doing. Look at verse 9. It says this, who hath saved us and called us with an holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began. You see, we're not about, if you're getting involved in the bus ministry, you shouldn't be about your own purpose. It should be about whose purpose? God's purpose. But at times, I'll be honest with you, at times you can get involved in the bus ministry and you can be part of it for so long that you lose focus. That it becomes just something that you do. It's just something that you do on Saturday. You just visit your kids. You just get on the bus on Sunday morning. You just sit down. You just pick up. Kids get on the bus. You say hi. They get off the bus. You say bye. And that's a shame. But what happens is that fire at one time at a bus conference, at some point where we got stirred up and a fire was ignited inside of us, and we went back home and we started a bus route and we got involved in our church even more. We had that fire burning inside of us. It's dwindled down. And we have to stir up that gift. We have to move. That's one of the reasons that our bus ministry our bus conference is so active. We don't want you just to come to the conference and sit there and listen to preaching, although that's good. One of the things we actually do is physically make you move, stir you up. And some adults really don't like that, but we got to do it because you know why? Because it reminds you what the bus ministry is all about. It stirs up, man, these games are fun. I love shoving all these marshmallows in my face. I love eating the strawberries and get whipped cream all over. You know, it's fun. I like seeing the bus kids smile. I like being invested, but we have to stir it up. Sometimes I will give you some advice when it comes to the bus ministry. Sometimes you need to have an ability to look back and see the blessings that God has done in your bus ministry. Because sometimes, honestly, there are a lot of kids that come in and come out of the bus ministry. I was talking to Brother Tyson earlier before the session. He was talking about how so often, really, the statistics are like 1 out of 10 will come back. You know, especially in big ministries where you have a bigger population, a lot of times kids will come one Sunday and and that's your only shot to give them the gospel, and you'll never see them again. But the truth is, although we lose a lot of bus kids and we don't know where they're at sometimes, and it can get discouraging, there are times where you can look back and you can see the bus kids that the investment was worth it. You can see it paying off. I sent a picture to all of our bus workers this past week. It was the one that I showed Mariah, and it was Mariah and her kids back in, I think it was 2015, and Lauren and Harper, just little kids. And I sent it to them. I said, a lot of our bus kids that have been coming faithfully for 4 or 5 years. Sometimes you forget it. You get on that bus, you're just used to seeing them. But you look back, I was going through all of these photos from 2014, 15, 16, because I upload these photos every year. And my heart was just encouraged. David. Because a lot of these bus kids are still coming. And not just still coming, but we get to see growth. Yeah. And it's important in being involved in the bus ministry to see times like that and to take joy and fulfillment in that and to let it encourage you. I'm sure all our bus workers are like, man, David's so psyched up recently about Lauren and Harper and Mariah getting involved. I'm going to keep being that way because it stirs my heart up. It reminds me why we do what we do, why we invest the way we do, why we get up in the morning, why we buy the promotions, why we keep on going. But you got to do that. You got to stir yourself up. Number 2, I want you to go over to verse 13 in chapter 1, verse 13. Hold fast the form of sound words which thou hast heard of me, in faith and love which is in Christ Jesus. That good thing which was committed unto thee, keep by the Holy Ghost which dwelleth in us. Second word, hold. Hold. Now, this doesn't mean stop. There are times in our life, in the bus ministry, in our life, where we got to stir up the gift of God. But there are other times where we got to hold on to it. We got to hold on to the principles, the things that we know to be true. 2020 was a year like that. Every ministry was affected in different ways, but all of us needed to hold on to what we know is true. We were talking about the camp. He was telling you a little bit about the camp. It sits on this huge lake. And every summer, we love having churches out there to do camps. And this past year, it was the first year we took a group of bus kids out there. They were about junior high and high school, and we took them out there, and a lot of them, that was their first time they ever been on the water in the lake like that on a tube. If you look on that banner that's outside that talks about Camp Patmos, a camp like no other, you can see why because of the picture on there. There's a tube, and that tube is really just a death trap, to be honest with you. But it's got these handles. The tube that we have is like a 4-person tube, and we pull it behind our boat, and it's got these handles on there. And depending on who's driving, you may or may not survive. But the job of the person that's on that tube is to grip those handles and to hold on for dear life. And it can get interesting. This past year, we had some kids that were not used to that at all. It took everything in our power just to get them on the tube. Once we got them on the tube, I'll tell you what, I never knew that they could hold on so tight. There's this one teenager, Damani. He was here last night. He should be here tonight. He's a big, strapping young man. And he got on that tube. I'm not kidding you. 5-10 minutes, as soon as we took off, he put his head down, and crocodile tears. He was scared to death. His younger brother was laughing at him the entire time. The youngest brother was calling for mama. And we're going around these corners at, 35, 40 miles an hour, and you're seeing the reflection of the water in your face, and you're thinking, this is the end. This is how I go. And these kids are holding on, and sometimes that tube with that force kind of goes up, and if you let go, the whole tube goes, and everyone goes. And I told the boys when we were on there, I'm going to be on here with you. I'm going to do my best to help you, but you have to hold on, because if you fall off, we're all going. And if you've ever been on a tube, if everyone goes at one time, it's like a pretzel, and it is not good. It is not good. So, sometimes you're very, very serious. You're like, guys, I don't want to die as much as you. Hold on, please, okay? And we'd go on those turns. And I'm telling you, that tube went up a couple times. And actually, this one kid, Victor, who was here last night, Victor's a small kid, just skinny kid. I'm telling you what, we're on a turn. And I'm on one side, I've got Damani on the other side. And when you lose somebody that's heavier on one side, the tube usually flips. That's what happened. Damani fell off. The whole tube comes up on its side. I fall off, but I'm still holding. I'm in the water, and I'm holding on to the handle. And Pastor sees, and he starts slowing down. The tube flips over, and finally come to a stop, and I'm trying to find Victor because he's a little kid. You know, I'm like, where is he at? The poor kid's probably crying, probably in the water. Probably slipped out of his life jacket. We get done, I'm looking around, and I hear something. I look up, kid is still holding on to the tube. I'm like, how is this even possible? That kid was so afraid of losing his life. He said, I am not letting go of these handles. We've had kids before where we're going on a corner, and if you've been on a tube, your legs will fly off, and you can still hold up, but your legs and feet and body are just dangling and hitting the water. Well, that tends to pull off your pants sometimes. So one of the things that we say to the boys and to the ladies is, make sure they're tight. One year, we had a church from, I think it was from Colorado, come out. And we were going, and it was a corner, and we were moving, and some kid was on, and I was on there, and I was trying to hold on to him. I'm holding on to him, and he suddenly just sort of lets go. And I'm like, what are you doing? So I'm holding him, right, on this corner. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's screaming bloody murder. I'm like, dude, Brother David, my pants fell off back there. You know, I'm like, God bless you, child. You know, when something valuable was ripped off of him, he gave up. He said, I'm done with this. I'd rather die than be humiliated. Well, let me ask you this. In our lives and in the ministry, sometimes it's like riding a tube like that. Sometimes it feels like you're going on corners every which direction, and it seems like the driver is just trying to kill you. And sometimes you look at the Lord, just like I'm sure David did, and said, God, he was distressed. He had no more power to weep. He said, God, why are you doing this? What's the reason? And Paul said, hey, Timothy, don't forget, hold fast. Hold fast. And it's just not hold on to what you want to hold on to. He said, hold on to the form of sound words, which thou hast heard of me. When it comes to the bus ministry and coming through 2020, the bus ministry, when we went into 2020, was sound. It was a good investment. It was important. And then sometimes we hit tough things and we hit adversity, and we suddenly decide, you know what? It's not so important that I hold on any longer. I'm going to hold on to something else. No, we got to stay true. And it's not just COVID, because COVID will come and go, and before long we'll have COVID-23, you know, and we'll just be doing the same thing over and over. And it'll be something else in our life or in the ministry. And God is saying, hey, hold fast. Do not let go. Because if you let go, you'll never get through adversity. You'll be a victim of it. So hold on. Number 3, I want you to turn over to chapter 3. Chapter 3, and I want to read just 2 verses, verses 13 and 14. It says this, but evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. This chapter right here, from the beginning, Paul is describing the end times, and he goes through a list of all of these horrible things that honestly we could read through these and draw a correlation to the year we just came through. The fact that a lot of the government and a lot of people were attacking churches and trying to keep them from assembling and meeting together, not just because out of health, even though that was an excuse, or even maybe in some people's hearts maybe it was true. The truth is we're living in a day and age where starting a bus ministry is not easy, and it's not getting easier. Right. People will do whatever it takes. Evil people will do what it takes to keep you from keeping your bus route going. I can think of one of the times when that video was swirling around in our town. I talked with a young gentleman. His boy started to come faithfully to our church, and he came Sunday morning and started coming Sunday night, and he came to a youth activity, and his dad came across that video, and his dad just got ticked off. And I mean, he came to the point where he was sending threatening text messages to me personally. And he wanted to do whatever it took to stop us from. And sometimes people don't know. Sometimes they don't even know. But this is the day and age we're living in. Not everyone. I know we're all comfortable right now, and we're all like, yeah, bus ministry. But you go outside of these doors, not everyone's going to be like that. In this chapter, Paul's saying, hey, we're living in a day and age, and there's a day and age coming where it's going to be hard. And he gives some advice. What does he say? I underline these next 2 words in verse 14. But continue. Thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them. But continue. This is different than just holding on. Continue implies movement. And that's what we've been hearing this morning. You can't just hold on forever. Sometimes you got to pull yourself back onto that tube. Sometimes in the ministry, you can't just hold on for dear life. Sometimes you need to, like Brother Tyson said the other night, if you've got one bus route, you need to get 2 bus routes. If you're not involved in the bus ministry right now, you need to get involved in the bus ministry. You need to say, I am going to continue. I'm not just going to stall out and fizzle out. I am going to push myself forward. David in the story of Ziklag, I know I didn't finish it, but David in that story says he was distressed. The people were about to stone him because they had lost their families, their possessions, their wives. They lost everything, and they were about to kill David. So not only is David running from Saul, not only is David not king like he believes he should be like he should be, he's running from Saul. And then he gets back, he loses everything, and now the very men that he was fighting with, his friends, turn on him. David was 100% alone. No one there to encourage him, no one there to pat him on the back, no one there to call him or text him and say, you can do it. He was alone. And there's going to come a time in our life where every single one of us are going to be at that area, in that place. What did David do? He sat down. The Bible says he was distressed, but the verse ends and says, but David encouraged himself in the Lord. How do you think he did? I think he followed this outline. I think he followed what Paul was saying. You know what he did? He encouraged himself in the Lord. And he didn't just say, guys, okay, let's just eat. Let's take a nap. Let's just go through the 7 stages of grief, and then we'll figure out what to do tomorrow. No, you know what he did? He said, let's go find him. Let's take the fight to the enemy. And if there's ever an offensive effort that the church can have, it's the bus ministry. Amen. I always call the bus ministry going out on Sunday mornings going to the front lines. And sometimes it seems like you're going to the front lines just of hell, literally with just a squirt gun, but God's with you. Amen. And God wants you to continue and take the fight to the enemy. That means that we have to stand up, get on that bus. We got to fire up. When it dies, when it quits, when it breaks down, we fix it on Monday. When we need the money to fix it, we apply ourselves, we raise the money, we do what we have to do, but we continue on. Because guess what? Satan will not stop his attacks on the bus ministry. Satan's not going to stop his attacks on our lives. So why should we stop? Liberalism won't stop. COVID will come and go, but another COVID will come. Another thing like that will happen. And we as Christians have to be willing to continue, to keep going. We have to have the spirit of saying, I'm not just going to try to survive, I'm going to thrive. And I know we talked a lot about last year, but guess what? It's not 2020. It's not last year. Guess what? You know, we all have a new slate. We all have 2021. We all have a future and a bright future if we will determine right now, I'm going to continue. It's very encouraging seeing those who were here last year, that came last year, the bus conference, seeing them come back again this year. Because it tells me they went back and they continued. They got stirred up at the bus conference. And that's the point of the bus conference. We want to stir you up. But more than that, you've got to go back home and you've got to continue. And seeing Brother Williams, what a great story. Yeah. You know, coming to the bus conference and being stirred up to start a bus ministry. And then going back home and holding on to that conviction, to the sound words in the ministry, and continuing. And I hope that you'll be back next year with more testimony about, hey, we're not just doing this, we're now doing this, this, and this. And I hope that's true of all of us, that we're continuing. Because guess what? Bad days, bad months, bad years are going to continue. But so should we. We're going to have days where we're not going to honestly want to serve God. You know, there are times where we're just like, God, I don't feel any love for the bus ministry. I don't feel any love for you. I feel in a dry and dusty place in my spiritual life. You know what God says you should do when you get to a place like that? Continue. Amen. Don't stop. Amen. Put one foot in front of the other and just do what you know is right. Because feelings and emotions come and go, but the commitment that we have to the Lord ought to be something that we just continue in. Amen. Every single day. When COVID hit and our attendance went down, some of the things that I've learned this past year through our leadership, you know what we did? We started a 3rd bus route. That's mental if I don't know what mental is. Starting a 3rd bus route and smack dab at the beginning of COVID-19. Guess what? That route that we started back in March, April, had more kids on it than my route this week. You know what we did when that police officer got there? You know what he said to us? He said, hey, somebody called and they said that you were having church, and we know that that's not technically allowed and legal. And me and Peter were standing there, and he kind of stepped in and he said, just so you know, our community, the police department, we're for you. And he said, just keep on doing it. We told him what we were doing. We told him the safety things that we were trying to do to make sure that we were telling him, hey, we're trying to be careful. But he was saying, hey, people in the community, we know people call and people are going to be against you, but just so you know, we're not going to do anything. We have to legally respond to a call. That's why I'm here. He said, really, I'm just here to shoot the breeze with you. So we stood out there for 5-10 minutes and we just talked. I don't even know what we talked about. He got done. He said, hey, we're for you. You know, when attendance in our church went down, all of these things, you know what we did? One of the things our church did, we started Christian school. Open enrollment Christian school where some kids are sitting in right now. You see, the devil meant it for bad. People mean it for bad, but what is God? God uses that same thing and can transform it to something good. Guess what? When we're going out soul winning, and we're getting those unfriendly encounters with people, you know what we did? We went back and we designed a COVID track. And we kept on giving the COVID tracks out. When we had the county tell us we can't get our buses renewed, our registration renewed. You know what we did? We painted our buses. The buses that are sitting there are parked out there. We've always wanted them painted. We just haven't had the time or the ability to do it. And guess what? That opportunity that presented itself, that wasn't adversity, we thought. It was something bad. It was a struggle. It was a difficulty. Turned out to be a blessing. We met with a business owner in town. He let us use his garage for free, his equipment, everything. And we painted ourselves. We painted not just our buses. We painted the minibus. We painted our vans. We got it all painted, all looking the same because guess what? It was an adversity. It was something hard. But when you attack it with the I'm going to continue attitude, with I'm going to stir myself, I'm going to hold on to the right things, guess what? Those things can turn into blessings. When that video was circulating through town, and we were getting attacked not only here in town, but even on social media by other so-called Christians for continuing to have church and continue to run buses. And it seemed like attacks in our ministry were ramping up and on our family, our personal life. And sometimes you got up in the morning, you're just like, why? You know what we did? We had a bus parade. We lined up every single van, every single bus, and we went through town honking our horns. We had the kids sticking their hands out and waving at people. And it was great. Everyone in town was encouraged and they were waving, they were honking back. No one was mad at us. And you know what it did? It stirred my heart up to continue on, to keep serving the Lord. Because when bad things come, sometimes we have to say, you know what? I am going to stir myself up in the ministry. I am going to hold fast to the convictions, the principles of the ministry that I know to be true. And I am going to step forward and continue. All of you are here to be encouraged, to have your hands strengthened in the bus ministry and in your life in general. But it won't happen unless you leave here and you take the things that you're learning now and you hold fast to it and you continue it when you get home. Because the end goal is at the very end of the book of 2 Timothy, chapter 4, verse 7. It says this. Paul says, I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. My question to you is this. Just like we learned last night, every bus kit has a name. And we don't know how long we're going to be able to invest in them. Just like it's on that video where you pull up to the house and the kids are gone. We've had that happen a lot of times in our ministry. I can think of 3 girls that we picked up on over here in a trailer court. And they would come every single Sunday morning. They were involved, but they came from a rough life, from a rough house. And it was a split home. Their drugs were in the house. Drinking was rampant. I mean, they came from a house where it wasn't uncommon to see them with a bruise or two get on the bus. We pulled up to their house, gone, after about 6-7 months. I don't know where they're at. I don't know. I never found them. And I don't know if it will ever turn out that way, but I do know this. I want my life at the end of it. I want God to look at me and say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Rather than me looking at the Lord and saying, I wish I would have given him more. So the question is for you guys, what's it going to be when you get to heaven? Those of you who are just getting started in the Christian life or just getting involved in church, someday you're going to look back at the end of your life, because it's going to go. Just like the time that we have to spend with bus kids, your life is a fleeting vapor as well. And someday you're going to look back at your life, whether in this life or the next, And you're going to have one of those two things. You're either going to have regret and say, man, I wish I would have helped somebody. I wish I would have taken the gift that God gave me and gave it to some kids that needed it. Or you're going to say, or you're going to hear from the Lord, well done, thou good and faithful servant. But it's up to us.